So in the previous lectures and also in the example, you have been exposed to the concept of the normal stress. Remember, normal stress is the one which is acting normal to the cross section of the particular object. Right? So here, as we said, so this is the longitudinal axis and these are the cross sections. So the normal stress acts perpendicular to each of these cross sections, right? The normal stress acts perpendicular to these cross sections and along the longitudinal axis. Right? So now what we are going to do in this particular lecture is that we are going to look at some of the theoretical concepts of the stresses and strains, especially of the normal stresses and the normal strain. So you have seen that this particular parameter sigma, which is the stress, and the epsilon, which is the epsilon, which is the strain, right? They are somehow, you're probably thinking they're somehow linked, right? Because when you are having this expansion, you're having the stress within the material, and as a consequence of that, you're seeing the material stretching. It is either expanding, if it's a tension, or it is contracting, whether it's a compression, right? So typically and as you can tell, the different materials have different kinds of these properties together. For example, the sponge which I was showing you, the amount of force I have to apply to stretch this one is different than if this was probably made of steel. So how it is typically done is that we have this tensile testing machine. You're probably already done this in your lab, or maybe in the solid mechanics lab, or maybe in a future upcoming experiment you would be doing. Right, we have the tensile testing machine, which somehow looks like this. This is the toy example of this equipment that is there, and we place the specimen over here, right? So if you have to zoom in, this is how it essentially looks like. So this is your specimen, which is essentially a coupon, which looks something like this over here, this coupon that you have. So you take this particular coupon and you clamp it at the top and at the bottom, and then you slowly increase the load. So while you're increasing the load, at every step you're measuring the load as well as you're measuring the deformation. Or remember that how do we calculate the stress? The stress is the load divided by the area, so that will give you the stress, and the strain you will get by dividing the delta that you are getting, that is the change in length, or that extension of this particular coupon divided by the original length of the coupon. Now remember, these experiments are done usually very slowly, so that you get a nice smooth line which essentially tells you what is the relationship between the stress and the strain, right? So once you do this, you take this particular coupon that you saw over here, this particular coupon, right, where you have the grip sections and the gauge section, and once you keep increasing the load, essentially after a certain point you gain fracture. Like, you cannot keep it extending indefinitely. After a certain point you reach a particular fracture, and this entire load path from where you have just started pulling the coupon till where you have had the fracture, and at every point, if you keep on slowly measuring the stresses and slowly measuring the strains, what you get is typically, and this curve which is upcoming is for mild steel. If you have a mild steel coupon, you are probably familiar with this curve already, that you get a curve which looks something like this over here, right? So you have a linear elastic region. So this is a linear, remember it's linear for steel, so it is straight. You have y equals to mx plus c kind of a relationship, so that is a linear relationship until this point A over here, which is the proportionality limit, because stress is proportional to strain. And then after that you have the yielding. Now immediately after yielding you have a perfectly plastic or a perfect plasticity. So essentially, with no increase of stress or no increase of load, the material essentially goes into a plastic kind of a deformation. And after that there happens some restructuring within the atoms and the molecules within the steel coupon. So it's all of a sudden things that it's more stronger than it was before. So you start following this path, but after that, and this path is known as the strain hardening over here, till you reach a peak stress. This is known as the ultimate stress, and after that you have the necking and eventual failure over here. So this point is a sort of a failure point that you see over here. Yeah. Now, as you can tell, that here I'm showing you two graphs, and what may be the reason for that? That there are two plots over here, right? Now remember, this is the plot of the stress versus the strain over here. Now these curves are for two different cases. Now remember that how do we calculate the stress? We divide this load divided by the cross-sectional area over here. Now imagine while you are stretching, what essentially happens, right? If I take this one over here, if I am stretching, my area, the original area which was over here, it keeps on reducing slowly, right? So this particular curve that you see over here, the solid red line that you have over here, that is known as the nominal line. Nominal meaning that regardless of the reduction in the area that you have had over here, you divide the load divided by the original area when it was undeformed over it. It is easier to do because in addition to measuring the stress, the delta, you also have to measure this particular dimension, that how much is the area reducing as well. And for practical purposes, the nominal stress strain curve is fine. Whereas the other one over here, this one, at every point you are also measuring the area which keeps on reducing. That's why the stress increases. Remember, stress is load divided by the area. That's why this curve, the true curve, so the true stress is of course always slightly higher than the nominal stress that you have over here, right? Which is also shown over here, that the nominal stress is the conventional engineering stress, which is most used for engineering purposes. It uses the initial area of the specimen, whereas the true stress uses the area of the cross section as it keeps reducing slowly and slowly, right? Now, one important thing to remember is that we get this whole line over here because steel is a ductile material. You guys probably know a brittle material, ductile material. Ductile materials means that it undergoes significant amount of deformations before it fails, and later you will study when you are studying concrete design that it is good for accidental designs. For example, if you're in a room where the beams or the columns may be failing, right? If it takes significant amount of time to fail, you get enough amount of warning to evacuate that particular room or that particular building that is there, right? Now, one very important thing to note in this particular slide is this point over here. Remember, this is not to scale, right? That's why you can see these regions, in a very nice, you can see the different transitions, the nature of this curve in the different points quite clearly. But this is not to scale. This is just to explain to you how the overall curves looks like if you zoom in the particular portion that is there. For mild steel, if you draw the plot to scale, it usually looks something like this. So you see here the proportionality limit is actually very small. The strain values are very small, and then it actually goes to a very large amount of strains over here. These are the same points. This is the proportionality limit, the yield limit. So you barely can distinguish between the points A and B over here as you could in this particular plot over here, right? So this one is to scale, this figure which you are seeing. Now, this is one of the examples of the steel material where often there is a very clear point of the yield which marks the yield and may not be, you cannot probably exactly pinpoint where that particular yield point is. For example, this one over here where the material yields and it goes into this plastic zone over here. But for some other materials, it is even more difficult. For example, if you consider some aluminium, it has no obvious yield point, and there is a particular method which is known as the offset method. In the offset method, what is usually done is that, and this is a sort of a it has an engineering significance to it, that why you are considering an offset of 0.002, which we will not be getting into this particular course, right? So you essentially make an offset of 0.002 and you draw a line which is parallel to the initial straight line over here, and the point at which it intersects, that point is known as the yield point, right? Now, like steel, aluminium is also ductile, and some of the other ductile materials are copper, nickel, bronze, wrought iron, maybe to a certain extent. Not cast iron. Cast iron is a brittle kind of a material. So you get the overall idea of what I'm talking about the ductile materials, right? Now, in addition to the ductile materials, you have brittle materials as well. For example, as I said, cast iron, you have glass, you have concrete, you have ceramic, you have if I maybe have to show you that these pieces of chalk that you have, they are brittle material as well. For example, if I take this and if I sort of make my hands the tensile testing machine and try to pull it, you see it snaps all of a sudden, it breaks all of a sudden without undergoing a large amount of deformation, right? So so as you can tell from the figure that up to a certain particular point, it shows some kind of a linear behavior, and then it goes, and the moment it starts to go in the non-linear region, you have a sudden failure which might happen in this particular material, right? So it fails at a relatively low strain, and the failure is almost always very sudden, right? And you do not have this necking phenomena which I was showing you in the previous one, because it snaps all of a sudden. So you do not have those gradual reduction of the area which is happening slowly, right? So, and also the second point, that it fails only after little elongation after the proportionality limit is exceeded, unlike the ductile materials like steel or aluminium, which goes long beyond your proportionality limit or the yield point which is over there, right? Now, some of the other concepts of pertaining to this theory of elasticity, plasticity, and reloading, for example, that if you take a look at this figure over here, we are talking about a material which is not linearly elastic. Remember, it's a linear means your stress and strain have a linear proportionality, which will come to in a minute, which you can see in steel or in the initial portion of the curve for aluminium. Your material can be elastic, but it can be non-linear also. By elasticity, what you mean essentially is that once you are stretching the material, you are letting go of the load, the material comes back to the original configuration, which you see over here, right? So this is for one, maybe a particular material for which you are loading it to this particular point A over here, and if you release the load, right, then it goes back to this, it follows the path and goes back to the original undeformed configuration over here, right? Now, suppose there is a hypothetical point E over here, which is known as the elasticity limit, right? This E is the elasticity limit. So if, as long as my point A is within this O to E over here, if I'm loading it and then releasing it, and it is going to go back. For example, if I have this small piece of plastic, you can barely maybe see my hands move, but if I just just pull it very lightly, and if I let it go, I do not see any any elongation, but I'm stretching it very little, so maybe I'm keeping it within that region from O to E over here, beyond which, if I'm releasing the load, is probably coming back to its original configuration, right? Now, if I stretch it beyond E, beyond this this limit within which it is elastic, that is the elastic limit, I am going to have, if I'm stretching it beyond this particular point, and then I release the load, this one, after the loading path, it does not follow back and come back to the original configuration. There happens a residual strain again for the same plastic material, right? If I stretch it, sorry, this one broke. If I maybe stretch it a bit and then I release it, you see that it stretches, it tries to maybe go back, but it cannot go back to the original length that was there, right? So you have some residual strain which is happening in this particular material, right? Now, if it has some residual strain, and next when I try to stretch it, it stretches from that point because it did not have the chance to go back to the original configuration, right? So something like this. So if I have it loads and then unloads, so you have this residual strain in this particular material, and then if I reload, it goes back from that permanent strain, the residual strain that was there, beyond that, right? And after a particular point, maybe it will fail. What happened when I was doing this is that if I stretch it, then it is going to fail after a particular point, right? Now that we have a basic understanding how of the different concepts like elasticity, elastic limit, proportionality limit, and so on, ultimate stress, ultimate strain, and the point it goes to a failure, let me bring you back to some of the earlier studies which was done on some of these fascinating concepts. Remember, now it seems very obvious, but back in the day when people were still trying to figure out how different materials behave, these are very fascinating problems, right? Which brings us to the Hooke's law, which you are probably familiar with from your plus 2 studies. So what you have over here, we have again for this particular figure is for mild steel. So for mild steel, you have this is the linear region. So Hooke's law, which was said by Robert Hooke at that particular time in I think 1650s or so on, that he gave this particular relationship. So remember, this is what we are discussing here is linear elasticity. Your elasticity may be non-linear also. Remember what we discussed in this particular one, here we are loading and unloading, but it goes in a non-linear path. All elasticity means, just the word elasticity, is that if you stretch it, you leave it, it comes back to the original configuration. It can have a linear relationship, it may have a non-linear relationship as well. Hooke's law is specifically for the linear elasticity that you have over here, right? So for the linearly elastic materials, the Hooke's law states that your sigma, that is the normal stress, remember the normal stress over here, is related to this particular strain that you are seeing over here by this proportionality constant. So your sigma is related to E, and if you remember, this particular factor E is known as Young's modulus, right? Which was discovered by, of course, none other than Thomas Young, right? So, and the Young's modulus, this is the modulus of elasticity, as I was saying over here, or the Young's modulus, which has which can be which of course, as you can understand, is different for different materials. For example, steel or silver or aluminium or bronze or nickel, right? So Hooke, this one is usually the same in compression and tension. So whether you are stretching the material or you are pushing the material, it is going to be more or less, it is going to stay more or less the same, right? Now, in addition to this, there is one more important concept which is known as the Poisson's ratio. So Poisson's ratio was, and this was proposed, and it's very obvious, but the thing is that there are many things in engineering which is visual, which is very obvious, but you need someone to go back and solve or give some mathematical relationship which you can go back later and use for your problems, right? So this one was given, the Poisson's ratio was given by none other than Simeon Denis Poisson, between 1781 to 1940. And this is, as I said, it is a very obvious thing. So if you have a material, right, and if you are stretching it, like, you see that what was my initial width, that width essentially reduces, right? Or in other words, my axial elongation is always accompanied by a lateral contraction. If this is my structure, axial elongation is always accompanied by the lateral contraction that you have over here. For instance, if I have to just give a demonstration of this one through this particular video, what we have over here, that you have the longitudinal direction, you are pulling it, right? And because of this, you will have this lateral contraction which is going on, and which you can maybe see in this particular diagram as well. You have, so this was the original, and then you have had a stretching in this particular direction, and you have sort of a straining in this particular direction, right? So it has sort of squeezed below, right? So if we have to define that, so Simeon Denis Poisson gave this this relationship between the lateral strain. Remember that this is my longitudinal direction, this is the along this one I will have the axial strain, and this is the lateral direction, this is the lateral strain, right? So Simeon Denis Poisson gave this relationship, that your Poisson's ratio, which is represented by the Greek alphabet nu, is a ratio between the lateral strain to the axial strain. So along this direction you have the lateral strain, which is measured by epsilon prime, and along this direction the axial strain is measured by epsilon, right? And remember that, observe this particular negative sign that you're seeing over here. And why does this negative sign occur? Typically tension is a positive quantity, but along with tension, that the extension of your particular structure, you have a contraction in the other direction as well. So that makes it two opposite nature of the physical behavior which is happening. So if you are considering tension as positive, your contraction is negative, so overall you get a negative sign in front of that particular symbol, right? So with this one, we are done with the theoretical concepts of the normal stresses, right? We talked about what normal stresses are for the ones which act along the longitudinal direction perpendicular to the cross section. So the normal stresses are also known as the longitudinal stresses or the axial stresses, one and the same thing, right? We talked about, and the normal stresses are represented by the Greek symbol sigma. We talked about the longitudinal strains, which is represented by the epsilon, right? We solved a problem on computing the stresses and the strains with this hollow cylindrical pipe. And then after that, what we did was that we studied the different material characteristics, that the properties or the theoretical concepts behind the stresses and the strains, how they're related, what is the relationship for a material in which your stress is linearly proportional to strain. You have the Hooke's law, which is sigma equals to E times epsilon, where E is the Young's modulus, right? We also learned one more concept of the Poisson's ratio, where you will see this becomes immensely useful in some of the engineering problems, because you have to keep this in the back of your mind while you are designing structures, that what is going to be the Poisson's ratio, how much amount of lateral strain can I expect when I probably intend to have some amount of longitudinal or axial strain, right? So next, what we are going to do, we are going to study the remaining concepts of this topic. Remember, we are again looking at the ingredients of this whole course of solid mechanics. The two important ingredients we have covered: the normal stress, the normal strain. A few more remain, which is the shear stress, shear strain, and the bearing stress. So see you guys soon.